Alright, so guys, today we're going to talk about the Cold War and the new two superpowers. So, the Cold War starts in 1945, which is post World War II. During World War II, Nazi Germany was an enemy of both the US and the USSR. And even though the US and USSR figuratively did not like each other, they were like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So, they went to war against Nazi Germany as allies and won. And after the war, Germany, I'm not drawing a geographically accurate, shape of Germany. So this is Germany, post World War One. All right. This is the Soviet zone. It was in the east. This is the U.S. zone right underneath. The British zone. This is the French zone, and right over here you see this little thing. That's the Saar Protectorate, which is which was a little German-controlled state, kind of, and was given back to Germany during the Western reunification as the Saarland. Now here is Berlin, and it was also split in half by the Western Allies and the Eastern Allies. So the Cold War, well, let's just say this: the Cold War never actually had fighting. Right? It was like throwing words at each other, spying at each other, but it wasn't really necessarily actual fighting. Right? They were just like threatening each other and stuff. They had armed weapons, so they were like, okay, maybe we shouldn't fight each other with these deadly nuclear weapons that could possibly bring an end to the world. So move on. So after World War II, both sides did not, both sides figuratively, came back to not liking each other. So the U.S. formed what we call they formed NATO, and their symbol, this thing. It definitely doesn't look like that on the actual flag, but let's just go with that. So basically, the point of NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, because most countries were in the North Atlantic Ocean, it was meant to stop the spread of communism. Like, hey, you stop right there. And in retaliation, that leads to the creation of the Warsaw Pact, which consisted of the USSR and its satellite states. Satellite states were states that had the same ideology and was highly influenced by the superpower, which included Poland, Belarus, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, other countries that were basically like communist satellite puppets. Also included Albania, but Albania was actually special case because Albania wasn't located near near Russia. It wasn't even touching Russia actually, because it was actually in more north, what is it, south, all right, south of Europe, near Greece. And it left the Warsaw Pact, and while other nations, tried to leave, but the Soviet Union sent troops to stop them. So obviously, you can see they're very much superpowers. So even though the U.S. and USSR didn't do fighting, they definitely started fighting in other countries. Two of the most prominent examples. The first one is the Korean War. So let's draw a little bit of shape of Korea, which will not work. Okay, so basically think of this rectangle as Korea. Beforehand, it was a United Kingdom, not the United Kingdom, like a sort of like the whole of Korea was united under one kingdom, and then it got captured by Japan. So this is the little circle representing Japan. You can see it looks like a tilted upwards flag. And then after the war, a U.S. backed and communist backed place, got built in. So in the north there was North Korea, and in the south there is obviously South Korea. So those states fought each other for a couple of years, and both states nearly got absorbed by the other, but in the end they were drawn to their 13th parallel, and the war stopped. But theoretically, both states don't recognize each other because eternally hated. North Korea thinks of South Korea as a weak United States listening puppet state, and South Korea thinks of North America as a dictatorship whose people suffer. And South Korea is more logically correct. But South Korea also has a lot of corporation monopolies, which is really not good. And the second example, which is where I come in, the Vietnam War, or as we call it, the Vietnamese Anti-American Resistance War, or the Resistance War simply. All right. So this is Vietnam. Right. So I'm drawing it very simple because I have no idea how to draw geographically accurate Vietnam. This is Vietnam, but to make it much more simple and much more good looking, this is what Vietnam would look like split in half. Alright, this here is North Vietnam, or where I come from. This here is South Vietnam, which is a US-backed Vietnamese state. So obviously this side has Ho Chi Minh, this side has a president whose name I will not tell because he was not good. Let's just say that. Ngo Dinh Diem. So they started fighting, and there were communist rebels in South Vietnam because they wanted to join back to the communist side. They fought in wars against the French, and now they fight their own Vietnamese people. I think that's like a big civil war that lasted a long time, 20 years actually. And in the end, well, the U.S.-backed South Vietnamese government surrendered and lost. All Americans evacuated from Vietnam after the war, and they actually broadcasted their loss on Saigon Radio, which is the radio for the South American government. So yeah, that is a short summary of what the Cold War was. Thank you for listening to what I've had to say, and goodbye. Have a nice day.